Welcome to ESEP, Teacher in Training Enhancement Modules.
This presentation has been sponsored by the Orchard Human Services, uplifting lives by educating, counseling, and caring.
OrchardHumanServices.org. We're a non-profit and so much more, serving children and their families with development disorders and special needs, uplifting lives by educating, counseling, and caring.
Exceptional Student Education Program, or ESEP Teacher in Training Enhancement Modules. The primary goal of this series of 3 training modules is to prepare teachers to engage in a responsive system that meets the needs of children with early signs of existing or potential exceptionalities or special needs. This training series will provide skill and insight to support the early childhood professional to identify and respond to children who demonstrate indicators of exceptional or special need in the early childhood care setting. Module 1, Introduction, Rubrics and Developmental Frameworks for Success, and the Concept of Ability Profile. In this introduction to exceptional student education in early childhood settings, we'll consider some important questions like, who are these children? What are their characteristics? How can a teacher use sensory input to identify children exhibiting challenges? How can a teacher document observations in order to support learning, behavior, development, and overall success in the early childhood setting?
And now, Orchard Human Services presents Exceptional Student Education Program, or ESEP, Teacher in Training Enhancement Modules, with your host, Darleen Wodzenski.
Hello, this is Darleen Wodzenski. Welcome to the Orchard's ESEP Teacher in Training Enhancement Modules. In this introduction of Module 1, we will investigate the question, who are these children? Exceptional students are atypical. That is not typical in some significant way that affects the way they receive services and engage in the classroom. Exceptional children are just that, children. They coo, cuddle, laugh, cry, and play, just like most children, with an exception. These children will need some kind of specialized care, support, or accommodation to be successful in the early learning environment. Your ability as early child care professionals to identify and respond to the needs of exceptional infants and children will help determine whether each child enjoys success or suffers disappointment throughout the first years of learning. In this episode, we will explore some critical questions like, who exactly are these exceptional learners? How can they be identified? What programs and laws determine how they receive service? And what does it take to meet the needs of this specialized learning group? So let's consider the first question. Who are these children? They are your students. They may also be your children or grandchildren, neighbor, cousin, niece, nephew, fellow club or church member. They could be newborns, infants, toddlers, preschoolers, or even primary students. Some of these children will have obvious characteristics that signal the need for extra support. Other children may appear to be well-adjusted and developmentally on track at first glance and will only be identified through careful observation and assessment in a responsive environment. Many children with exceptionalities will fall somewhere in the middle of this range of possibilities, and child care professionals will have a sense that something is not quite right with the children's behavior, development, mood, or health status, but not be able to quickly identify the issue. This is when observation, interaction, assessment, and documentation will provide the important clues about the child's unique pattern of exceptionality. What is most important to recognize is that infancy and early childhood are critical periods in the growth and development of all toddlers and children. Early identification allows for early treatment and intervention, which is proven to create the best outcomes for developing infants and children. And in some cases, early intervention can catch and resolve problems before they progress into serious challenges. So let us take a look at the characteristics of children who require exceptional student services and support in the early childhood learning environment. So let us take a look at the characteristics of children who require exceptional student services and support in the early childhood learning environment. Children who qualify for special or exceptional student education services are served under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and must meet requirements in one of 13 predetermined categories. And here they are: autism, deafness, deaf-blindness, hearing impairment, mental retardation, multiple disabilities, an orthopedic impairment, other impairment, serious emotional disturbance, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, or visual impairment, and that would include blindness. Now, some of these conditions may clearly exist from birth, such as the complete loss of hearing or vision. Other problems take time to identify and may only be noticeable when the child is older. In many cases, children may experience problems with development or learning in connection to challenges with many factors with the way they'll present in your classroom. Here are some of the things to be looking for: posture or body placement, movement or motor control, attention and focus, sensory processing, including noise, texture, lights, and colors, social behaviors and interaction, eye gaze, behavior, mood or emotion, flexibility or willingness to transition, speech, and nutrition, general health, and hygiene. Identifying potential problems and challenges is a critical part of early childhood care and education. Because developmental and learning problems can present across such a wide spectrum, teachers must use sensory input to identify children exhibiting challenges. Early childhood educators use their senses as the primary investigative tool in assessing infants, toddlers, and young children. These professionals depend on what they see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and smell with their noses to observe, document, and evaluate the developmental status of children in their classroom. Early childhood care providers can see a child's posture, gait, movement, balance, coordination, and rhythm. They're able to feel an infant's muscle tone as they hold the baby in their arms. And these professionals can hear the way little ones coo, laugh, cry, babble, and speak, and are able to visually observe the way children move their mouth, lips, and tongue as part of auditory communication. For example, a teacher would both hear and see a child's lisp and be able to document observations from both visual and auditory sources. Early childhood teachers are also able to feel when a child is trembling, hot or cold, or stiff from being upset. Touch and smell can even support teachers in documenting potential nutritional or health issues. For example, a child whose breath is fruity may be showing signs of a blood sugar disorder, while a child with a strong and sour diaper may be suffering from diarrhea. In each case, the early childhood professional can document observations and make referrals as appropriate in order to ensure the health, safety, and well-being of young children receiving services. The next critical question is, how can a teacher document these observations in order to support learning, development, behavior, and overall success in early childhood education settings? And the answer is that there are many strategies available for documenting and supporting the important observations and other information collected in the course of caring for a young child. Teachers can do so many things, like gather samples of the child's work product to include in the child's portfolio. The items to include may be a photo of the child's block arrangement, child's drawing, or even a sample of the child's writing, coloring, or scribbling. Teachers can record anecdotal notes in the child's file. These might be typed notes, or it could just be quick little handwritten notes that the teacher jots down while observing the child in the classroom. And teachers can complete formal assessments using a standardized assessment instrument, like a checklist of behaviors and abilities based on the child's age and developmental status. An example is the ASQ, which is a developmental checklist for indicators of developmental challenge or delay in young children ranging from infancy to 5.5 years of age. The ASQ3 is the general tool for childhood developmental status, while the ASQ-SE is the tool that focuses on the social and emotional development of the young child. Teacher grades or ratings on projects, activities, and developmental tasks are great things to document a child's progress. So are parent reports and formal assessment instruments or questionnaires. An example is the CHAT, which is the checklist for autism in toddlers that's typically completed by parents. And always remember that when available, therapy and medical documentation of the child's developmental status and evidence of exceptionalities or special needs are always important to include in the child's folder.
Quick review. Children with exceptionalities are children. They require some support to succeed. IDEA is a law that defines special or exceptional education. IDEA has 13 categories of disability. Some disabilities exist from birth. Other disabilities are documented later. Early identification and intervention produce the best outcomes. Teachers must observe and document. Teachers use all their senses for observation. Many forms of documentation support observations and findings of a child's exceptionalities.
This is the end of Module 1, Episode 1 of Orchard Human Services ESEP Teacher in Training Enhancement Modules. This information will help prepare you to master the primary focus on this training series, which is creating a responsive system for your classrooms. This is Darleen Claire Wodzenski, and I'll see you again in Episode 2, which will be Mind Mapping a Responsive System. Until then, happy learning.
OrchardHumanServices.org. We're a non-profit and so much more, serving children and their families with development disorders and special needs, uplifting lives by educating.